Hey, what's happening everybody? This is Double RPG here, and instead of doing a Let's Play video or a review or, speaking in front of the camera, I'm just only going to talk to you, through a microphone because I want to deliver to you my honest thoughts about this whole situation of what's going on right now. And in case if those of you don't know what's going on right now, but if you could tell by the name of the video, I'm going to deliver to you what my own thoughts on the whole campaign with Nintendo trying to get the games Xenoblade Chronicles, The Last Story, and Pandora's Tower localized in the West. Now, Operation Rainfall, like I said, it's a campaign to get those 3 games localized in the North American market because it seems like Reggie Fils-Aime and Nintendo of America are just completely denying those games, to get released in the market. And I definitely think it's a really bad decision for them to do that because those games have done really well in the not North American, but in the Japanese market, that they're possibly going to get a European release. And I know Xenoblade Chronicles is definitely going to get a European release, in September, and there has been hints of a European release of The Last Story. But still, there hasn't been a hint of a European release for Pandora's Tower, but it's going to be most likely. Now, for this video, I'm just going to talk to you about what I know about, the 3 studios, Monolith Soft, Mistwalker, and Ganbarion are, and, just for my own, knowledge and such. So, whatever you do, don't even comment on me about, what they all did and, what games that they came out. And don't even comment me about my speaking abilities because it's one of my biggest pet peeves in case somebody, if somebody, makes fun of my speaking abilities, or if they just, completely bash me for it, it just shows that they're not very nice people. I mean, I do better with scripts anyway, so, like I said, don't comment on my speaking. Even though as bad as it may be, don't comment on how bad it is. I mean, it's because if you do comment on how bad it is, I'm gonna immediately delete your comment. No question about that. Anyway, but before I talk about those 3 games, I want to say that 2011, back in E3 2011, Nintendo said that The Legend of Zelda: Skyward Sword, which is coming out this holiday season, might be the swan song for the Wii, because it seems like they're directing all their attention towards the Nintendo Wii U that's going to be coming out next year, and it just doesn't seem like that they're focusing more on the Wii at this point. It's like, in order to end off a console with a bang, they need to focus on that console more, and even though keep developing the next generation console, but just focus more on, with one final stretch to make the console a very big success. Not just Kirby Wii, and not just Skyward Sword, but we also need to get Xenoblade Chronicles, The Last Story, and Pandora's Tower on there too. Okay, now, let me talk about Xenoblade Chronicles first, and then I'll go to The Last Story, and then I'll go to Pandora's Tower. Now, Xenoblade Chronicles, it's being handled by Monolith Soft, who is under the direction of Tetsuya Takahashi, making the game. And it's definitely one of those games that got really good reviews in Japan. I think it got like 36 out of 40 in the Famitsu magazine, and which is really surprising that the 4 main reviewers each gave it a 9 out of 10. So that's a really strong leg right there, for a game that has done really well in the in the Japanese market. Now, what I know about the game, it is an RPG like, The Last Story and Pandora's Tower, but it's one that's kind of based more around the whole storyline between. I think it's it's along the lines of the universe of like the Xeno series, kind of like Xenogears and the Xenosaga. Even though I could be mistaken, but it just with the name Xenoblade, it kind of makes me think back to Xenogears and the Xenosaga franchise. Now, for me personally, I really enjoy Xenogears. I definitely think it is considered one of the best RPGs ever made on any video game system to this day. I mean, it has a really fun battle system, it has great characters, a great story, and, just this huge length of gameplay. It's really, really astounding to see, some guy, for an RPG that has a huge emphasis of storytelling. I mean, Tetsuya Takahashi to me is kind of like the Hideo Kojima of RPGs, because this guy is definitely one that puts in lots of, time and effort to make really good stories. No question about that. Now, Xenosaga, I'm not really that big into, but I was more big into Xenogears, because the Xenosaga series, even though it was episodic, it did have that same type of feeling as Xenogears in terms of the, settings and narrative and some of the characters, but it just seems like it was more of a Star Wars or a Star Trek type of thing. More specifically Star Wars, but yeah. Now, Xenoblade Chronicles, it seems like this one, it's completely fantasy-based. I'm not gonna lie. Looking at the game itself, it seems like it's more of a fantasy type of game this time around, and not just a sci-fi. Because even though Xenogears was kind of, fantasy, there were some sci-fi elements to it, and also Xenosaga was heavy on sci-fi, because the games always took place in space. There was no question about that. And, now, Xenoblade Chronicles, or Monado, Beginning of the World, as Amazon.com has it on their pre-order page, for the North American release. That's what the original name of the game was called before they changed to Xenoblade Chronicles. Or it was just originally Xenoblade in Japan. Xenoblade Chronicles, like I said, it's more fantasy-based, and the RPG system, it's really fun, and, just from looking at the gameplay that they have for it, and even some of the screenshots, too, and even some of the characters actually looked very, very good. Granted, some of the newer games that, even legendary game designers make these days, even though, some of their, games and characters may not be that memorable, but, just for conscience-based reasons, that's, enough reason to make me want to play another JRPG on any console, specifically for the Wii, since it was made specifically for the Wii. It was one of those games that pushed the Wii to its full capabilities at the time. Definitely one that a second-party developer has, put in a lot of time and effort in terms of making a Japanese RPG. It's not to say the same with The Last Story in Pandora's Tower, but Xenoblade Chronicles by Tetsuya Takahashi, it's definitely a win-win situation that should get localized in the North American market, and not just Japan and Europe alone. Okay, now, The Last Story is being developed by Mistwalker Studios and AQ Interactive. Now, Mistwalker Studios is under the helm of the famous creator of the Final Fantasy franchise, Hironobu Sakaguchi. And I think also, Nobuo Uematsu did the music for it too, so that became a really big, hit in Japan as well, and it got the same scores as as Xenoblade Chronicles, but I think it might have also gotten a bit higher. I could be mistaken. I think it may have gotten a 38 out of 40, or it may have been a 36 out of 40. I'll have to check up on that. But this game, from what I know, it is an RPG, but it's kind of, a little bit action-oriented, and it seems like it has a bigger focus on, controlling multiple party members, kind of like what you did in the Mana series, or Secret of Mana, to be more specific. And the art direction looks really, really well done, and, it's just the setting, it's so ecstatic. It kind of does have that feeling of the old Final Fantasy games, just taken from a different perspective. Some people may consider this game, The Last Story, as Final Fantasy on the Wii. Hironobu Sakaguchi has been around, for a very long time, and he was one of those guys that, took the risk of making a really big game to make it a seller and a saving grace for Square-Enix before, they kind of, made the franchise differentiate itself from what he originally envisioned back in the past. But Mistwalker, it just seems like he's kind of doing the same thing again, because he recently said that if The Last Story did not score well or sell well, then that would definitely be the last game he would make. But hey, if you take a look at the sales figures of what the game has made so far and the scores it got, it just shows that, The Last Story is repeating Final Fantasy all over again. It definitely became a really big hit in the Japanese market as well. And I know that, and we know that Final Fantasy made it over here in the United States back in 1990, and it also was really well received in the West on Nintendo, and that was before, the whole N64 debacle with Hiroshi Yamauchi when he bashed Square and many RPG developers for not putting RPGs on the Nintendo 64 when they immediately went over to the Sony PlayStation. He was a complete jerk. And that's one of the reasons why he, almost died down the Nintendo 64 and the Nintendo GameCube, even though Iwata took over his position after he resigned from his position as president. But Iwata was the guy who, tried to make peace with the developers for what, Hiroshi Yamauchi has done in the past. And I think it was, I think the last story was one that, missed. I think Nintendo did themselves justice to make peace with Hironobu Sakaguchi after, Yamauchi's whole controversy back then. So that's why I think Mistwalker did, the last story did really well on the Wii, because, it just shows that, some person that has a big reputation like Hironobu Sakaguchi making a game for a system, something really big like the last story or Final Fantasy, and it'll, show that, people still care about RPGs, not only just for the PS3 and the 360, but also for the Wii. I mean, where have the RPGs been, Nintendo? We want more, and we want some things that have big production values, and this is definitely another game that has some really big production values as Xenoblade Chronicles. I mean, just look at it. It definitely looks like a Final Fantasy game, but just look at everything. It's amazing. Okay, and the last game, Pandora's Tower, which is one I'm kind of in the shadows about and don't even know that much information, but I do know that it's being developed by Ganbarion, the creators of Jump Superstars and Jump Ultimate Stars, basically the Super Smash Bros. Clone that had the famous protagonists and antagonists from the weekly Shonen Jump mangas that took place in Japan, in a magazine in Japan called Weekly Shonen Jump every week. And it had famous characters like Monkey D. Luffy and Goku and Ichigo from Bleach and Naruto and even Tsuna or whatever his name is from Katekyo Hitman Reborn and all that. And now Pandora's Tower, it's an action RPG, I guess you could say kind of in the vein as like Star Ocean or the Tales series, or maybe something like Kingdom Hearts, if you were to, compare it to a Japanese standpoint. Now, Pandora's Tower, I definitely like, when it came to action RPGs, I think it's something that people kind of opened up a little bit more, equally opened up to as far as when it came to the traditional Japanese RPGs or JRPGs, kind of like Final Fantasy, back then. But action RPGs these days, kind of like, what the Tales series has done, they've been very appealing to the eyes, even though the sales of the games haven't been, very successful, but it was a type of genre that people still have a really big fondness for. Now, granted, Pandora's Tower is probably the only game that has gotten the weaker scores out of 3. I think it got like a 31 out of 40 or a 32 out of 40s, which it isn't that bad, but it's not up there in terms of the, with the high quality of Xenoblade Chronicles and The Last Story, but it still has become a classic with the Japanese market, too. And I know that Ganbarion they've also worked on the One Piece games for, the Nintendo consoles, like a One Piece Grand Adventure, and that was the only thing that we got here in the North American market out of them. Now, granted, most anime-based games that are based on the anime license of certain animes or mangas in Japan, they haven't done really well in the video game tradition. I mean, I guess you could say the Naruto franchise is probably the only property in Japan that has worked really well with video games, especially with their latest release of Naruto Shippuden Ultimate Ninja Storm 2 on the PS3 and the 360. And the Pandora's Tower, even though it kind of does have an anime feeling, the game itself, in terms of the action, I think the action is very solid, for a JRPG at this point. And I definitely think my fans agree with me, even though I'm still, kind of under the shadows. And, just looking from the images and, some of the gameplay footage, it just blows me away, to see how much potential that this game and the other two can have in the North American market. Now, everything, I've said everything about those 3 games, but what I guess I'm trying to say to Nintendo is that they have got got to end the Wii off with a very strong leg, with not just, 2 or 3 titles. If you were supposed to account a third title, then I suppose Mario Party 9 will work, but they need to end it off with some really strong, not only, those 3 titles, but also those second-party titles as well. Because, even though Monolith Soft was kind of a third-party developer at some point, as well as Mistwalker, but and also Ganbarion, but they got acquired by, Monolith Soft got acquired by Nintendo, and Mistwalker worked closely with, and AQ Interactive worked closely with Nintendo, and Ganbarion has worked closely with Nintendo too, so they were in terms of the second-party division, and they wanted those games to be released, for everybody. And I definitely think that, Xenoblade Chronicles, The Last Story, and Pandora's Tower needs to make it over here for the US market also, and not just, the European release of those games being hinted at. But except for Xenoblade Chronicles, even though it's being slated to release in 2011 in Europe, but we still haven't got, a plan for a North American release in this territory. It's very sad. It's very sad that all those games are not, planned at this time. So, for all of you listening to this video, I think this is a campaign, Operation Rainfall. It is definitely a campaign that we all need to support, and if you want those games to be released in the North American market, I mean, if you're a huge Nintendo fan and a huge JRPG fan, kind of like I am, hence my name, Double RPG, then I definitely think it's, I definitely think those games are, ones that need to make it to this market as well. So, Nintendo, please listen to us. Make peace with us again. Don't squander away from these games that we want to see released in the North American market. Like I said, they have so much potential, as, Nintendo of Europe has taken an account of. So, follow their footsteps. Release those games over here. We want them over here. We want the Wii to end off with a strong bang. We don't want it to, be led into obscurity. I mean, it's kind of like what you did with the Nintendo 64 and the Nintendo GameCube before you moved on to the Wii. And now it just seems like history is repeating itself. I mean, if you want to end things off strong, then you definitely need to do it, by getting these three RPGs over here. Not only just with the Europe market, but with the US as well. I mean, think about it. The last time that you ever had a strong bang with ending off console was the Super Nintendo. I mean, you had Donkey Kong Country 3, you had Super Mario RPG, you had Chrono Trigger, you had Final Fantasy VI. I mean, just a plethora of games that were just astounding when they were released. So, if you want to end off the Wii, kind of the same thing with the NES and the Super Nintendo, then retrace your memory back, with the Super Nintendo and the NES, and, take that same initiative to make, your current console end off with a very strong bang. I mean, that way you can get more sales of the Wii at this point, even though sales of the Wii haven't been that very successful in the long run within this year. I mean, definitely, Nintendo, you have definitely got to make peace with your fans still. I mean, you can't just squander off the Wii and its last legs as of this year. I mean, you can't leave those other 3 games as your only releases for the Wii as of this year. We want a good chunk of games to end off the system with a bang. And I know I tend to be repeating myself, but that's kind of how I feel about the whole situation. I mean, they definitely, if they want to end things strong, do things right for the Wii, then they've got to do that right now. I mean, it's like ever since they made the jump from the Nintendo 3DS to the Nintendo DS, it seems like they're focusing their marketing on the Nintendo DS more with its last leg, even though the system's still on its last leg. But it's like they're not even focusing on the new handheld right now. It's like they need to focus on that more. But for the Wii, since it's gonna be, since many people say that it's already obsolete, I still say that there is a good chance, for this year to be the last year of the Wii. Nintendo, just make sure you get those games, okay? We want them in the North American market. We want Xenoblade Chronicles, we want The Last Story, and we want Pandora's Tower. Don't end up becoming like the 3DS, where you're not even putting in so much marketing, which you should do so right now since it's already released. But don't market the Wii after the Wii U releases. We want this system to sell well. You need to focus on the future right now. I mean, sure, you need to focus on the future right now, but also focus on, ending off your current console with very strong titles. That's all I'm just asking. Anyway, yes, I'm going to be supporting this campaign. I'm going to be sending letters and, well, I'm going to be sending a letter and making phone calls and leaving messages on their Facebook and Twitter accounts. You know, just continually persuading them to get their butts in gear. Well, I wouldn't say it like that, but to get them a wake-up call to get these games localized. And I know it's still going on right now, and the pre-orders on Amazon.com has reached the #1 spot in the top 100 game sales as of right now for the Wii. And that, you know, well, especially with Xenoblade Chronicles, which is still called Monado Beginning of the World, but people are still wanting that game to be released over here. And then they're going to do the same for The Last Story and as well as Pandora's Tower. So they want those games over here. And I know that Soraya Saga, who married, you know, Tetsuya Takahashi, she was very receptive and very favorable to this campaign, as well as Hironobu Sakaguchi and Mistwalker Studios. They were very favorable of what the fans want. They want those games to be localized, not just being, you know, not just leave the Wii in obscurity right now. They want the system to end off strongly. That's the point of a console, of a current console. You want to end it off strong, so people will remember it as a really great system that ended off with a, you know, that ended off with a bang or ended off very strong. So, anyway, that's all I have to say about the whole situation. So, if you have any comments below, if you have any thoughts below, just be sure to leave them in the comments, and, let me know what you guys thought, and think of, you know, possibly some, you know, easy ways to, you know, I'm not saying that this is going to be easy, but some cool tip, you know, some very interesting tips that would help try to get Nintendo to, you know, give them a wake-up call that we want these games out here badly. Because with them being missed from E3 2011 this year, I think it was a really big wake-up call for, you know, the Nintendo fans, as they were not extremely receptive with leaving those games out of the E3 show floor this year. So I think it's definitely time for us to, you know, focus really hard on this campaign to get those 3 games over here. I'm not kidding. Anyway, thank you for watching this video, and I'll definitely be on this Monday with new episodes of Tales of Fantasia and Tales of Symphonia with Double RPG Let's Play, and hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend, guys, and I'll see you then. Peace!